Having somebody pull away from you, especially when you're just starting to invest and feel more connected to them, is one of the most frustrating things that you can experience, right? So, how do you prevent that from happening? How do you actually build something with someone without scaring them off, right? And how do you ensure that they will actually want to keep working on the relationship with you? How do you even know if they even have the capacity to work on the relationship with you, or if you should actually leave that person, leave that relationship, and find somebody else, right? These are all questions that I myself sat with in my own journey as I was healing my own attachment system, right? And I was moving from a place of anxiety to a place of more security. And for a long time, I thought that the thing that I needed to do was to show somebody that was pulling away just how much I cared about them, right? Just how much I loved them, just how invested I was in them, right? I thought that in those moments of them pulling away, that if I just let them pull away, that would make things worse, that would be somehow conceding and giving up on the relationship. And I felt like the right thing to do was to fight for the relationship, right? And to show them just how much I cared, to prove just how invested and committed I really was, in the hopes that that would somehow reassure the other person and get them to want to invest in me, right? It took a long time for me to recognize that I was doing everything backwards, right? In fact, I was doing the exact thing that was pushing away the other person faster. And it's very understandable for if you've done the same thing, because what we tend to do as human beings is we project our experience and what we need onto another person. And we think and expect that the same things we need are the same things they need, right? This is especially the case if you're an anxious and you're projecting your experience onto someone with a more avoidant attachment system, right? We think that they want reassurance because the truth is we want reassurance, right? We think that they want more closeness, when in truth, they want space, right? And in almost every situation, the avoidant wants something completely opposite of what you do. And so this is what I eventually realized. And so before then, though, before I actually realized this, I kept pushing away partners or people that I could potentially build something with, right? And it was a very frustrating pattern. I really didn't like it because it made me feel bad about myself. I kept feeling like I was doing something wrong and that I wasn't good enough to actually keep this person in my life, right? But after I understood the dynamics between an anxious and an avoidant and how they interplay and how my own behavior was actually contributing to the other person, to the avoidant pulling away faster, right? That's when I could actually do something about it. And that's when I felt more empowered in my dating life and in my relationships, because I could be aware of my own patterns and how I was unintentionally affecting and influencing and triggering the other person, right? And I could also then see and spot their patterns and recognize how I could actually soothe them, right? And how it could even prevent triggering them and sort of sidestep it altogether by the way that I was communicating with them, right? So this is what I want to help you with, ultimately, because I know that you want a relationship where you feel at ease, where you feel like supported and you feel like you can show up and be invested and actually receive that investment back, right? And actually build a relationship built on mutual respect, right? And mutual investment, where you don't feel like you're walking on eggshells, where you don't feel like you're giving more than the other person is giving, and you feel this huge imbalance, right? And where you don't feel like you're pulling all the weight, right? That's not a fun relationship to be in. And I also know that if you are in a relationship like that or have recently been in one, it can feel kind of confusing because you might not know whether or not you should keep investing in that relationship, right? Because there's more that you can do, or if the right thing is actually to move on, right? And the reason this happens is because so often as anxious people, we tend to take on the responsibility, right? And we make it solely our responsibility. And there's this sort of thinking that we could do more and that we don't want to give up too soon. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to break down the exact steps the step-by-step instructions for how to go about healing your attachment system so that you could potentially show up in the current relationship you have or in a past relationship that may still be salvageable, right? So that you can show up in those relationships in a way that actually helps them to have a chance at surviving and thriving. And or, right, to if you show up that way and those relationships still don't change, well, then you know that it has more to do with the other person's lack of willingness or capacity, and that it's not actually something that is within your control and it's not your fault. And in that sense, then you can actually focus on moving on from that relationship and finding somebody that actually does have the willingness and capacity to meet you where you're at and makes it easy for you to be able to continue to invest and to get your needs met. All right. So let's go through the 6 steps in order to help you do this. All right. And I came up with an acronym that helps just for simplicity's sake, and it's SECURE. All right. So the first step here in order to get yourself from where you are right now to being able to heal your attachment system, become more secure, and then, attract a partner who actually has the capacity and willingness to invest in you. The first step is to soothe your nervous system. All right. There's no way around this, because until you learn how to consistently and repeatedly soothe your own nervous system without depending on somebody else, even a therapist, even your friends, even especially your partner, right? Until you learn how to do that, then you're operating from a dysregulated state. And no matter what you do from that dysregulated state, it's likely coming from a reactive place, right? And it's likely making things worse. So the very first thing to do is that when you feel that anxiety, when you feel that uncertainty, when you feel that panic, when that fear of loneliness, of being abandoned, whatever it is, in those moments, you need a tried and true method to really ground yourself, to really soothe yourself and get yourself back to a more grounded, calm, regulated state before anything else happens. Okay? And so you can do this through meditation, you can do this through breath work, you can do this through yoga, and there's other tools that I have as well that you can do. You can do this through journaling, right? You can do this through going for a run, going for a walk, right? There's lots of different ways to do this. What's more important is that you do something and you do it consistently, right? Every time that you get dysregulated, you have your tried and true practice. Okay, so the second step then is to examine your triggers, all right? Now that you're more calm and you can kind of think a bit more clearly, now you want to go back and look at the trigger itself, right? What actually caused the anxiety? What actually caused the anger or the loneliness or the fear or the sadness or whatever emotion came up, right? You want to get to the root of it. You want to understand why it came up in the first place, because our emotions are messengers, right? They don't just happen randomly. They carry messages. They have wisdom for us. And until we learn how to relate to those emotions and process them and actually see the wisdom and the gold within them and extract that wisdom and then do something about it, right? Until we learn how to do that, then we're essentially we're never actually creating resolution for ourselves. And every time we have a trigger, we get triggered, we're just getting triggered and triggered and triggered, right? So the good thing about being able to regulate your nervous system is that it's really great in the short run. It helps you get calm and centered. The downside to that is that if that's all you do, if you're only regulating, then you're never actually dealing with the trigger, right? And so you just keep getting triggered over and over and over again. The only way to actually uproot the trigger altogether is to examine it, is to see what is actually causing the trigger in the first place. And then you can do something about it. That way you don't just keep regulating for the rest of your life, but you can actually uproot the trigger altogether. Okay. And at the bottom of a trigger is one of two things. It's either an unmet need that you have, or it's a disempowering story or belief, right? It's either one of those two things, an unmet need or a disempowering belief, right? And so it's important to be able to tease those out. And you're going to see in a moment why it's so important to do that. So let's just put the unmet need on the back burner for a second, and we're going to focus on the disempowering belief, right? Because this leads into our third step, which is create a new and empowering belief. Because see, here's the thing. part of the reason that you keep getting triggered is actually not due to something external that is happening. You may think that it's, oh, the avoidant pulls away, right? My partner pulls away. And that's what creates the feeling of getting triggered, right? That's what creates my anxiety. But it's actually not the case. It may feel that way. But what's more true is that it's actually your belief about them pulling away, your interpretation about them pulling away, the story you are spinning in your mind, right, about them pulling away, and the meaning that you're giving that, all of that is what's creating the actual emotion. That is what's creating the trigger. And so you need to be able to spot how your own mind is creating so much of the suffering that you're experiencing. Right? Them pulling away might be the external trigger that then triggers the internal belief system, right? Or the internal story that now, because they're pulling away, that means I must have done something wrong. Or because they're pulling away, that means I'm being abandoned now, right? Do you see how there's that leap from external stimulus to then internal interpretation of that external stimulus, right? This is why it's so important in step 3 that you create a new and empowering belief. Because once you actually get your mindset right and you actually start thinking more positively, or at the very least more reflective of actual reality and not the what you were projecting onto it because of a disempowering belief or story that we were carrying with us throughout life that wasn't even really consciously chosen, but rather conditioned into us from childhood, right? Until we actually create a new empowering belief, we're just going to keep getting triggered and triggered and triggered because our mind is at the source of that and it's creating the suffering. Okay, so once you have the mindset right and you can clearly see the distinction between the disempowering story that your mind is spinning and then the actual unmet need, right? Once you can tease those apart and then you take care of the story and you create a new empowering story, then we can actually focus on the need, right? So that leads us into step 4, step 4, which is understand your needs, all right? The reason that we postpone the needs is because if you are trying to understand your needs from the lens of a disempowering story or belief, right, that need is going to be tainted. That need is going to be biased. You're not going to be able to actually look at that need and see it objectively. It's going to be coded with all the emotional charge, right? And all the negative perspective that you are bringing to it, right? But that's why we deal with the story first. And once you have a new and empowering story, now you can look at the needs more objectively. And you can see that, oh, there actually is something that needs to change here as well. But now I'm in a more grounded state to be able to see it objectively and then to express it constructively, right? And so that actually leads us to the next step, which is request a need or reinforce a boundary, right? And it's critical that at this step, once you've identified your need, right? Once you understood the need and what it is at its core, then you think about what you actually do, right? Now you actually need to do something. It's shifting from just the mental understanding and theory to actual practical action, right, in the world to change your outer experience. And so that usually looks one of 2 ways, right? Well, one of 3 ways. So when you're in step 4 and you're looking at and understanding your needs, you might discover that there is an unmet need, but that you can meet it yourself and that it doesn't actually require anything from your partner, right? That's very possible and, in fact, quite probable. And an aspect of understanding your needs is actually to recognize when you can meet them yourself and then going and doing that, right? So that's really important. But the other 2 options is that you might actually discover that there's a need and that actually you would like your partner to meet it, right? And because you're already meeting your own needs and you already have that as a baseline, it's okay to request a need from a partner, right? If you're not proactively meeting your own needs, but then you're expecting somebody else to meet them, That gets you into a really tricky territory, and it makes you more dependent on that person, which is what creates so much of that pressure for them, right? Which creates so much of that expectation from them, right? This is why it's critical to, in the fourth step of understand your needs, that you're actually also meeting your own needs. Okay, but let's assume that you're already meeting your own needs and you actually do want to get your partner to help meet one of your needs. Well, that's the step 5 of request a need, right? So it's not just requesting a need, but doing it in a way where your delivery doesn't accidentally turn them off, right? And make it hard for them to actually receive the need that you are requesting, because that is too often the problem that I see, right? In my own life and in the lives of the clients that I've worked with, is that when you speak, when you request a need, when you communicate from a place of anger, right, that's not been processed, or from a place of just dysregulation, right, or from a lens of a disempowering story, it taints the way that you're requesting that need, right? And it makes it so much harder for the other person to receive that and then want to actually meet your need. And the problem with this is that when this happens, you don't know for a fact that the other person is not capable of meeting your needs, because you can't say for sure whether they're not capable or whether it was your delivery that made them so unreceptive. And as long as you're confused about that, you're going to want to stay and keep working on the relationship, because you can't quite say, I am proud of the way that I showed up. I am proud of my own behavior. And because I'm proud of the way that I show up, and because I know I did my due diligence to communicate this in a grounded, compassionate way, right? That way, if the person does not receive it, then you know that it has to do with them. And you feel so much more confident about walking away because you've done your due diligence. Okay, so back to this 5th step of requesting a need, right? You request the need from a grounded, compassionate place, or if it's not a need that you want them to meet, but it's a need that you need them to respect, that's where you reinforce a boundary. Now, if that sounded confusing, all it really means is that when you're requesting a need, you're asking the person to do something. But when you're reinforcing a boundary or asserting a boundary for the first time, you're not asking them to do anything. You're telling them what you will do in the face of them doing something, right? So if you start to yell at me, if you start to criticize me, right, I am going to leave the room, and I'm going to need like 15, 20 minutes to calm down, cool down before I come back, and maybe we can then restart the conversation if you're in a more grounded state, right? That's a boundary. Requesting a need would be, hey, would you mind using kinder language when you speak to me, right? It's important that you distinguish these two, and that you learn how to, when is the appropriate moment to request and when is the appropriate moment to assert a boundary. And usually the less investment there is in a relationship, the earlier on in the relationship you are in, the more appropriate it is for you to assert a boundary, and the less appropriate it is for you to request a need, because there isn't as much investment made, right? And this is one of the main things that pushes away avoidance, is when you're requesting for needs that are disproportionate to how much actual investment and time and energy there's been put into that relationship. So once you've requested a need or you've reinforced a boundary, right, the next thing and the last thing to really do here is to evaluate their behavior and adjust accordingly, right? This is where the rubber meets the road, right? They could have said yes to your need. They could have said yes to your boundary, whatever it is. They could say all the nicest things, but you really need to observe their behavior. Do they actually change? Are they making an effort? Do you see them actually working through their own tendencies and wanting to meet you where you're at, and wanting to meet your need, wanting to respect your boundary, right? And of course, you give them a little grace. Nobody's perfect. No one's gonna just automatically, you're essentially asking them to build a habit, right? And think about how hard it is for you to build habits in your own life, let alone building a habit for somebody else, right? And so give them a little grace early on, and be patient and give them some reminders. And also, like, if and when they do actually meet your need, it's critical to appreciate them for it, right? It's super important to let them know that you really appreciate it, because this is the thing that encourages them to keep doing it, right? And it lets them know that they're being seen and appreciated for what they're already doing, right? Because one thing to know is that avoidants typically have an "I am not enough" disempowering belief going on, right? That's been conditioned into them since childhood. And so if you're not appreciating them for when they do show up, it creates this narrative that nothing they do is enough for you. And then that's what then makes them feel like, oh, I don't want to do anything for you. Like, because they're like, it's never going to be enough. So why should I even try? Right? This is why it's really important to appreciate them when they do show up. Okay. But if they don't show up, or you remind them multiple times and you're kind, you're compassionate, and you may even appreciate them the one time they do it, but they're still not actually changing, right? Well, that's where you have evidence now, right? You have more data. And at that point, it's really, there's only one of two things to do. Either you meet the need yourself and not expect this person to meet it for you. And if you're okay with that, then okay, then continue the relationship. But if you're not okay with that, if that's not what you want, then you can have maybe one last conversation with them and let them know that you haven't seen much progress or change, and that unless something changes, you're gonna have to withdraw your energy and investment and share it with someone who has the capacity to meet you where you're at. You could share that with them if you want to give them one more chance. But if you've seen enough and the data's clear, right, and their behavior's clear, then there's really nothing else to do but to leave that relationship, right? And to either remain single for a little while or find somebody that does have the capacity to meet your needs and respect your boundaries, right? And so these 6 steps are what take you practically from a place of feeling insecure, anxious, uncertain, and not actually receiving the respect that you deserve and that you want, and not having a partner that is actually able to meet you halfway, right? From that space to then actually showing up in a relationship from a much more secure place, right? Because I don't believe that security is this one magical final finish line step that you just reach and then you just are always secure. It's an active process. It takes daily effort to stay secure, right? And even a secure person will have moments of insecurity, will have moments of reverting back to insecure tendencies and coping strategies and things like that. Like, it just happens. It happens to me. It happens to all of us. It happens to the best of us, right? We don't need perfection, right? And we never reach this perfectly secure state. But by following these 6 steps and really learning to embody them into your life on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis, these are the things that ensure that you're showing up to the relationship in a way that you can be proud of, right? And when you're showing up into a relationship in the way that you can be proud of, and the way you can honestly say, like, yes, I did my due diligence. I made sure that I grounded myself before communicating. I made sure that I got clear on the need. I made sure that I was meeting that need myself, right, before even asking or requesting from somebody else, so that it's not a desperate thing that I'm requesting of them, but more of like a luxury that I want to experience in this relationship. And yes, I took the time to think clearly about how I wanted to present and communicate and request for this need or this boundary, so that it doesn't trigger the other person, right, and increases their likelihood of being able to receive it. And then I gave them the grace and the patience and the time to show up for me. And if after all of that, they're not able to show up for you in the way that you want, then you know that it's time to move on. And you can walk away without feeling guilty, without thinking there's more that you could have done, without feeling like you're giving up on somebody or abandoning them, because you've already done your due diligence and the data is clear. Right? And that's when you start to create the space for somebody to actually show up for you in the way that you deserve, in the way that you want, but in the way that you may not be actually signaling to people and to the universe that you actually believe you deserve, right? Because you might still be falling into your own dysregulation and then acting from that space, right? Which is creating this dynamic of the push-pull that you're so familiar with that is so frustrating. All right, so if you want help with any of this, right? I do one-on-one coaching, and I'd be happy to help you, and ultimately to become secure so that you are content and centered within yourself, with or without this particular person, and with or without a partnership at all, right? Like, that's the goal, that's the juice, to be able to be so rooted in yourself that you have so much self-love that you don't even need a partner. And when you are in that space, that's the best place, ironically enough, to actually find a partner who is also secure, who also doesn't need you, but whom you guys can come together and want each other, desire each other, not from a place of desperation, but from a place of security. And that's what changes the whole game, right? And that's what creates relationships full of ease and respect and love and intimacy and all the beautiful things that we want. So if that sounds like you, and you want that, and you want some help, check out the link below and apply to work one-on-one with me. All right, well, that's it for today, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks. Peace.